piece, I want to talk about corporate tenancies. Now, what do I mean by that first and foremost? Not commercial tenancy. We're not talking about commercial buildings or warehouses or factories. We're still talking about domestic dwellings. But what I've seen as a big trend in 2023, and it's continuing this year, is that landlords absolutely are looking to maximize their profits on the properties they've got. And so rather than the traditional ASTs, which have clearly been suffering because rents can't rise anywhere near to the pace that mortgage rates have gone, so landlords have been looking at alternatives, and corporate tenancy has been one of those alternatives. If you've not heard that phrase before, let me just explain some examples of what I mean by that. So it might be a developer offering a brand new build a property or maybe an apartment, and he or she's offering guaranteed rent for a certain length of time if you have an agreement with them. I've seen letting agents make that proposition to landlords, saying, look, contract with us, we'll give you a guaranteed rent, 365 days a year, no void periods. Whoa, what's not to like? Where do I sign? So really appealing to enter into these contracts directly with the agent or the developer. And that means then it's up to the agent and developer who they have in the property, what type of tenant. It's not your concern anymore. And that means you're no longer in the traditional AST relationship. You've now got a corporate contract. It might be that you are letting the property to a charity. And charities have all sorts of different people in there. There might be people with learning disabilities, mental health issues. It might be a halfway house for people coming out of prison back into community. It might be people trying to escape from domestic abuse, and so it's a safe house. Obviously the charities have all sorts of purposes. They still want a domestic dwelling, but for all these different sort of setups. And again, these types of organizations might offer very lucrative, profitable rentals that are prepared to pay, and quite often will manage the maintenance. So again, extremely appealing to a landlord to engage in these types of contracts. But here's the thing. The point I want to make on here is that not many lenders will entertain a corporate type tenancy, because unlike an AST tenancy, which is born out of the Housing Act, which is pretty much a standard template, so lenders understand what the content's going to be, there's no such thing with a corporate tenancy. It starts with a blank sheet of paper. It's down to a set of solicitors to put together a legal contract that's suitable for their client. And so I've seen so many variations. Some can be 30, 40 pages long. So as you might understand, a lender really wants to see the detail of those corporate tenancies to make sure there's nothing in there that they would find unappealing or not acceptable. So this is a reason why we need to get under the surface of what these tenancies look like and what type really do lenders have appetite for and what don't they. So I've also put on my third bullet point about a preferred term. Again, there's no, unlike an AST, which is usually 6 to 12 months long, a corporate tenancy can be any length of time. I've seen 10 years, 20 years, 2 years. From a lender point of view, 3 to 5 years is the sweet spot. That's what they like to see. When it gets beyond 5 years, then we start to see a lot of the doors closing on that one. So look out for that. Now, on my fourth point, I've got a section called vulnerable tenants. So first of all, what do I mean by vulnerable tenants? Now, these could be, as a few examples, asylum seekers would be classed as a vulnerable tenant. I mentioned a bit earlier about people with learning difficulties or mental health issues. So if a charity had that category of tenant in the property, that would be classed as a vulnerable tenant. And lenders generally ask on an application, or it might be supplementary information that they're going to request, as to whether the property might be let to vulnerable tenants. Now, why would a lender be interested in that? Well, this will never be in writing. So this has come from experience talking to lenders. Why do they ask about it? Because unfortunately, most lenders do not want vulnerable tenants in the properties. Now, why is that? Why are they not going to be socially responsible institutions and actually still lend on properties that where you as landlords might want to be helping out charities and organisations that are helping vulnerable people in society? Well, here's the deal. Here's the thing. The bottom line is a lender is always looking at what if I have to repossess that property. That's the lenders. They're not optimists. They're not gamblers. They're very prudent by nature. They're looking at the worst case. And if they had to repossess a property, what happens next? They kick the tenant out because they want to sell the property as soon as possible. And to get the best market price, to get the highest price and get the most demand, it needs to be vacant possession. So can you imagine the newspaper/internet headlines? Faceless, heartless institution kicks out blah blah vulnerable tenant. It just would be such bad PR. So unfortunately, lots of lenders will take a step backwards if there are no vulnerable tenants in there. Now, look, if you are thinking of going down that line yourself this year, that's part of your goals. Look, there's always exceptions to rules. You would usually be able to find lenders who can support you, still lend against that. My point is, because I have to generalize on these updates, is that we're looking at the exceptions in terms of lenders, but the rule will be many lenders would walk away from that. The final point here is it's one thing about purchasing a property and possibly engaging with these different relationships. So what about repurposing your existing portfolio? So lots of our landlords are looking at existing portfolio to push the profits and the rent up. So they're looking at an existing property that's going to have an existing mortgage on there. So we need to be looking at the existing mortgage offer. Does that mortgage offer's terms and conditions allow you now to move from an AST to a corporate tenancy? On the whole, again, I'm generalizing, they will not allow it. So you need to understand where you'll be contravening your T's and C's. Easiest thing is to send it to your broker. We'd be more than happy if you were our client, send us through a copy of your mortgage offer, tell us who your lender is, and we will look into that sensitively, confidentially, and give you the feedback as to whether that would be acceptable or not. If it is, great. If not, at least you're armed with that information. And if it's appropriate, then we might move you from lender A to lender B that does allow you to use the property on a corporate basis. So that's the takeaway point from me on this is if you're looking to purchase, get a hold of that template corporate tenancy agreement as soon as you can. Send it through to us. We're more than happy to tout it round to different lenders, talk to lenders, get them to analyze it and give some feedback as to whether that type of agreement is going to be acceptable. Clearly, the sooner you know that, the sooner you know that you can continue your conversation with those agencies and start negotiating and come to an understanding. And equally, if it's a property repurposing, send us that copy of the details of the offer through. And again, we will tell you whether that's going to be acceptable. So again, at the end of this piece, there's a link in the comment section below. Just click on it if you want to have a chat about a specific property you're either thinking of buying or you've already got on your repurposing. And as part of your property team, we'll give you that really, really useful practical advice as to what you need to do to get that type of tenancy in place and up and running.